So, good day everyone. Today, we're going to talk about a research proposal entitled The Impact of Rice Certification Law on the Economic Growth and Development of the Rice Farming Industry in Selected Areas of Leyte Province. So, first, we have the overview or the chapter 1, the rationale and the background. So, on February 14, 2019, President Rodrigo Duterte has signed the Republic Act Number 11203, or simply known as the Rice Certification Law. So this law actually signifies a significant agricultural policy. It has two main provisions. The first is that the quantitative restriction or the import ban on rice was removed and replaced by tariffs. So instead of a limit on the number of imports, a tariff has been established. For ASEAN countries importing rice to the Philippines, they are charged with 35% tariff, and for non-ASEAN countries that import rice with a threshold of 350,000 or less metric tons are charged with 40% tariff. And non-ASEAN countries that import rice to the Philippines with a threshold of more than 350,000 metric tons, they are charged with 180% tariff. So the second provision is that the revenue from these tariffs will be used to create the Rice Competitiveness Enhancement Fund, which will be allocated for the improvement in the rice industry. Such improvements includes advanced technologies for the rice industry. Accordingly, the government said that it will give 10 billion pesos to the rice farming industry to assist the farmers for 6 years, and after 3 years, they will assess the effect of such program. So, with this implementation of this law, it is expected to provide affordable rice for consumers along with increased income for the rice farmers. However, this actually resulted to a drop of palay prices during the latter part of 2019 and even during 2020, which means that our farmers are earning less than what is anticipated. And according to some news and some literatures, our farmers are already suffering from the less income because sometimes their lesser income cannot cover for the cost of their palay cultivation. So with this, we have decided that a research study will be conducted to analyze the impact of the rice certification law on the economic growth and development of the rice farming industry in selected areas of Leyte province. This study will specifically focus on the effect of the livelihood sustainability and the income of our rice farmers. So why the Leyte province? So the Leyte province is one of the main contributors of rice or palay in the Philippines. So we also have the statement of the problem. So the aim or the general aim of the study is to analyze the impact of the rice certification law to the economic growth and development of the rice industry of the selected areas in the Leyte province. So with this general aim, we have come up with four specific research problem. Our first is, what are the effects of the impact of the or the impact of the rice tarification law to the rice farmers of the rice farming industry in selected areas of Leyte province in terms of livelihood sustainability? So we want to answer this question. Another question that we want to answer with this research study is that how does the rice tarification law affect the rice farmers' income in the selected areas of Leyte province? The third question is, what is the impact and significance of the rice certification law to the current state of the rice farming industry in selected areas of the Leyte province? And our last specific research problem is that, is there a significant relationship between the implementation of the rice certification law and the economic growth and development in the rice farming industry in the selected areas of the Leyte province?
Statement of assumptions. So these are our initial assumptions prior to doing any research related to our topic. So in our research, we indicated 5 assumptions. First, every rice farmer in the province is affected by the rice tarification law. Second, the rice tarification law is not the only factor that affects economic growth and development of the rice farming industry in Leyte province, but we assume that it is the factor with the greatest effect. Third, the proper implementation of the rice tariffication law provides beneficial effects to the rice farmers, but a poor implementation of said law would adversely affect them. Fourth, there is a difference between the current state of the rice farming industry of Leyte province and the state before the implementation of the rice tariffication law. And our last assumption is that there's a difference between the current income of the rice farmers of Leyte province and their income before the implementation of the rice tariffication law. So next, statement of hypothesis. In this portion of our research, we state our guess or our expectations on what our conclusion is most likely going to be. So we have four hypotheses and each of them corresponds to the four questions in our statement of the problem. So first, the rice tariffication law has no effect or impact on the livelihood sustainability of the rice farmers in the selected areas of Leyte province. Second, the rice tariffication law does not affect the rice farmers' income in the selected areas of Leyte province. Third, the rice tariffication law has no impact or significance to the current state of the rice farming industry in the selected areas of Leyte province. And last, there is no significant relationship between the implementation of the rice tariffication law and the economic growth and development in the rice farming industry of the selected areas in Leyte province. Significance of the study. So our aim for this study is to provide information that may benefit primarily three groups in our society: our rice farmers, our consumers, and the government. So for our rice farmers, we want to help them voice out their concerns regarding the law and its provisions and their current state of livelihood after its implementation. So by gathering information related to the impact of the rice tariffication law on their livelihood, we may be able to uncover issues that rice farmers have experienced after the passage and implementation of such law, as well as those issues which they would want to be addressed. Next, for our consumers, this research study also aims towards providing awareness to common consumers as to how the people who plant the rice which they consume every day are being affected by this law. So when people are aware and have more knowledge on the reality that our rice farmers face every day, it may change their behavior and they may want to contribute more for the betterment of our rice farmers. And last, for the government, we want to help them in identifying the degree of the law's goals achieved and identifying areas of improvement for the rice tariffication law. So we want to find information which may aid the government in assessing the effectivity of the rice tariffication law. And we would also like to, in some extent, contribute to the government in creating better conditions for our rice farmers through this research. So for the remaining parts of Chapter 1, my groupmate Chikaina will be discussing all about them. Thank you.
So now for the scope and limitations of the study. So the respondents of this study will be limited only to the rice farmers of selected areas of Leyte province. Because of the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic, the researchers will utilize the conveyance sampling technique in choosing the sample from the respondents. Also, due to the uncertainties brought about by the pandemic, the researchers have prepared four options in which data gathering can be done. So the first is the face-to-face survey. The second option will be sending out and collecting the questionnaires through mail. The third option will be conducting the survey through text, and the last option will be through Google Forms. Furthermore, the descriptive, the descriptive survey method with the use of questionnaires will be used. It will be supplemented with a documentary analysis of the farming sector's economic performance. Now we go to the definition of terms. So first we have Consumer Price Index. This is an indicator of the change in the average retail prices of a fixed basket of goods and services commonly purchased by households relative to a base year. The next one is economic development. So this refers to economic growth with an improvement in the quality of life and living standards of individuals. The third term is economic growth. So this refers to an increase in the production of economic goods and services compared from one period of time to another. Next, we have gross domestic product. So this refers to the total monetary or market value of all the finished goods and services produced within a country's border in a specific time period. It functions as a comprehensive scorecard of a given country's economic health. Another term is income. So this refers to how much money an individual makes after accounting for inflation and is sometimes called real wage. Next, we have livelihood sustainability. So as used in the study, um, this refers to the ability of the rice tariffication law to help the means of living of rice farmers and rice farm owners cope and recover from stresses and shocks and maintain or enhance its capabilities, assets, and activities both now and in the future while not undermining the natural resource base. So, another term after livelihood sustainability, we have rice farmers. So, as used in the study, this refers to rice farmers in selected areas of Leyte province who finance their own capital and who earn the income and profit from the rice farming activities. The last term is rice tariffication law. So this refers to Republic Act number 11203 or an act liberalizing the importation, exportation, and trading of rice, lifting for the purpose of the quantitative import restriction on rice and for other purposes, which was signed into law by President Rodrigo Duterte on February 14, 2019. Now we move to the organization of the study. So this research proposal have three parts, namely introduction, theoretical background, and research methodology. So the first chapter presents the introduction of the research proposal, which covers what the study aims to analyze. The second chapter deals with the theoretical background of the study to, to review and gain insight into the aspects of the problem in order to determine the similarities and differences of the findings between the past and present studies. And lastly, Chapter 3 provides the research methodology adopted for the study to be carried out and further explains that such design choices are the best fit for the research aims and objectives and will provide valid and reliable results.
The related legal basis of the foregoing proposed study are Republic Act 8178, which is an act replacing quantitative import restriction on agricultural products, except rice, with tariffs, creating the Agricultural Competitiveness Enhancement Fund and other purposes. This act was amended to Republic Act 11023, with its Article 5, Section 4 repeals existing laws and provisions of laws prescribing quantitative import restrictions or granting government agencies the power to impose such restrictions on agricultural products or hindering liberalization of the importation, exportation, and trading of rice. Article 10, Article 13, Article 14, and Article 15 of Republic Act 11023 have significant bearings to the effect of the said law to the economic growth and development of rice farming industry. Article 10, Section 10 provides that a special safeguard duty on rice shall be imposed in accordance to RA number 8800 and its implementing rules and regulations. Article 13, Section 13 provides for the creation of Rice Competitiveness Enhancement Fund or RCEF to fund programs in accordance with Rice Industry Roadmap. Article 14, Section 14 states that the beneficiaries of the Rice Fund as the farmers, farm workers, and their dependents listed in the registry system for basic sectors on agriculture and rice cooperatives and rice associations accredited by the Department of Agriculture. This means that farmers and farm workers of the rice farming industry, including their families, are directly affected by the implementation of the rice tariffication law. Article 15, Section 15 states the list of principles that governs the development and implementation of the roadmap for the rice industry. The list includes principles that are related to economic growth and development of the rice farming industry. The researchers will use the descriptive approach to describe the relationship between the independent variables, intervening variables, and the dependent variables. The independent variable is the rice tariffication law. The researchers will determine the effect of this variable to the dependent variables, which are economic growth and economic development. The indicators for economic growth will be the GDP per capita and consumer price index. The indicators for economic development will be income and livelihood sustainability. Moreover, there are intervening factors that may affect the relationship between the independent variables and dependent variables as they may weaken or strengthen these variables. These intervening factors will be natural disaster, climate factors, health crisis, and technological advancement.
This section of the research states and describes the theory that explains why the research problem under study exists. So this study is structured with the theory of protection, which introduces the importance of protectionism or the government policies implemented to restrict international trade, to prioritize domestic trade, and help improve the activities within a domestic economy. Safeguarding the domestic industries, according to the protectionist policy, can be done on either having quantitative restrictions or implementing tariffs on importations. Having quantitative restrictions limits the amount or volume of products that can be imported, which limits the foreign supply, thus allow the local products to still have their competitive position in the market. Implementing tariffs, on the other hand, does not limit the volume of products that could be imported. However, the tariff rates make the price of the foreign product become higher. Not implementing the amount of agricultural product to be imported encourages free trade between countries and is believed to increase productivity in the market due to competition. So with this, the Republic Act number 8178 of 1996, with its title An Act Replacing Quantitative Import Restrictions on Agricultural Products, except rice, with tariffs, creating the Agricultural Competitiveness Enhancement Fund, and for other purposes, was implemented. In this act, it replaces the quantitative import restrictions on agricultural products to make the agricultural sector of the country more viable and efficient in competing in the global market. However, this act did not lift the quantitative import restriction on rice to protect the rice farmers against unfair trade. Allowing import of cheaper rice increases the supply of rice in the country and causes the domestic producers of rice to offer lower farm gate prices to be able to compete in the market. As a result, the cost of producing rice remains the same, and the farmers would be greatly affected since they would realize lesser profit compared to when cheaper foreign supply of rice is limited. However, during 2019, this Republic Act was amended, and Republic Act 11203 with the title An Act Liberalizing the Importation, Exportation, and Trading of Rice, lifting for the purpose the quantitative import restriction on rice, and for other purposes, or simply known as the Rice Tariffication Law, was implemented. This act replaces the quantitative import restrictions with tariffs, and therefore the quantity of foreign rice being imported is not anymore subject to restriction, but certain percentages of tariffs are imposed in the importation. Tariffication may still be a form of protection since the high tariff rates make the price of the foreign rice become higher, and the revenue derived from the tariff is set to benefit the local rice farmers. However, the entry of unrestricted volume of foreign supply of rice still adversely affects the local farmers. The rice tariffication law, being an example of a protectionist economy policy, which imposes tariff duties on the importation of rice in the Philippines. Both have favorable and unfavorable effects towards the local farmers.
Okay, so we have here the related literature. First of all, we have an article published in Philstar Global, which stated that with the implementation of the rice tariffication law, it caused the influx of more imported rice, causing farmers also to lose 68 billion pesos. Now, according to the Federation of Free Farmers, this 68 billion pesos loss was due to a decline in the palay prices of 3.62 per kilo. Second, we have an article published by Dr. Adriano in the Manila Times stating that shifting to the rice tariffication law will not just bring positive consequences but also negative consequences in our country. The positive consequences include more savings from the government. This is because the NFA, or also known as the National Food Authority, is buying prices or palay at high prices. However, it sells it to consumers at very low price. In addition to that, the benefit is a lower inflation rate and a more affordable rice for the consumers. However, for the rice tariffication law, the main negative consequences is the decline in palay prices, which adversely affects our farmers. And lastly, we have in here on October 13, 2020, published on ABS-CBN News, it showed that the rice farmer groups responded to the hardships that were caused by the rice tariffication law by planning to gather signatures to support their call to scrap the said law. Now, what caused them to do so is the decrease in the price of the palay, and as a result, their income have decreased, which they could have used to meet their needs. So that's all for related literature. Next, we have the related studies. We have the findings in the research entitled Impact of Rice Tariffication Law in Selected Rice Farmers in Nueva Ecija, Philippines. It has a significant bearing in this proposed study. So basically in this research, it was found out that 100% of the farmers responded that they have negatively felt or they have felt the negative effects of the rice tariffication law, and also it showed that there was really a decrease in the palay prices. Now, in a sense, this research was similar to ours. However, the main difference is that in our research, we focus more on the impact of rice tariffication law on the economic growth and development in the farming sector in the Leyte province or selected areas of the Leyte province. And in addition to that, this study, the research over 2 days, is they use 2019 data, but for ours we will use 2019 and 2020 data to compare the prices and other factors that we have to compare. Then second, we have the study about the distributional impact of rice tariffication policy in the Philippines. And in this study, it was similar to others in the sense that it found out that the consumers will benefit in the form of more affordable price of the rice. However, the farmers would suffer from the decrease in the prices of palay. Then lastly, we have a study by Mendoza and Torres, which stated that the 10 billion rice competitiveness enhancement fund is in fact good for the farmers since it will help them to assist to profit from their harvest. However, in the Philippines, the issue of corruption is prevalent, and also there's the issue about that the fund allocation may not necessarily flow to those areas or region with low productivity. So there's still a problem with that RCEF. And despite the establishment of this 10 billion fund, if it will not be properly allocated to the farmers, what use is that going to be? Right? So those are the related literature and related studies. And lastly, we have here the justification of the proposed study in relation to the legal basis, the related literature, and related studies. So the legal basis bears significance to the study since it provides the specific provisions in the law that are applicable to the studies and the framework which serves as a basis for the effects of the tariffication law, which we will examine. Second, the related literature presented also bears significance to the study since it highlights the need of the government to assess the effectiveness of the rice tarification law of not just lowering down the price of rices for consumers but also to protect our local farmers. And lastly, we have here our related studies. It has a direct bearing in the proposed study in the sense that it provides information about the initial effects of the rice tarification law, and our goal or our role as a researchers rather is to further investigate the effects of rice tarification law if it differs from the initial effects.
For chapter 3, we have the research methodology. In this chapter, we will discuss the research design that will be used in the study, the research environment, research instruments, the participants of the study, the data gathering procedure, and data analysis. This study will utilize a descriptive approach in analyzing the impact of the rice certification law on the economic growth and development of the farming sector in the selected areas in the province of Leyte. This study specifically utilizes the survey method, wherein questionnaires will be used to gather data from respondents, and this method will be supplemented with documentary analysis of the farming sector's economic performance as reflected by published documents by the National Economic and Development Authority and the Department of Agriculture. The research environment will be the province of Leyte. And as research instrument, this study will utilize a questionnaire which will be categorized into three parts. The first part is set to determine the impact of the rice certification law on the rice farmers in terms of livelihood sustainability. The second part will determine the current state of the respondents after the implementation of the rice certification law. And the third part is where the respondents will be asked to provide their estimated income before and after the implementation. This research instrument is subject to to validity and reliability, and its reliability coefficient resulted in a Cronbach alpha value of 0.709, which is interpreted as an instrument with high reliability and is ready for use in the research study. Research respondents will include the rice farmers of Leyte Province, and through the sample size determination, it has been determined that there will be 36 respondents in this study. The 36 rice farmers will be chosen through convenient sampling, and we chose this sampling technique due to the restrictions brought about by the COVID-19 pandemic in the research period.
Then we have the research procedures. Before gathering the data, the researchers will first send out a transmittal letter to the respondents stating what the study is all about and indicating the intent of the researchers to gather data from the respondents. In this letter, the respondents will get to decide in what form the questionnaire will be carried out and how they are going to convey their answers. This letter will be sent out and collected through mail, email, or in person. The respondents have four options on how they will receive and answer the questionnaires. The first option will be a face-to-face survey, wherein the researchers will hand out the questionnaires to the respondents in person while following the COVID-19 health and safety protocols. The researchers will also collect the questionnaires in the same manner after the respondents have completed them. The second option will be sending out through mail. The questionnaire will be sealed and addressed directly to the respondent. In return, the respondent will send back the questionnaire addressed to a designated researcher. In situations where the respondent has questions regarding the questionnaire, the researchers may be reached through call, text, or email. The third option will be conducting the survey through text. The respondent will have to state in the transmittal letter his or her contact information. In this option, the researchers will convey the questions one at a time by waiting for the respondent to reply to the question first before asking another one. And the last option will be through Google Forms, where the respondent will be given a link to the questionnaire. In this case, the respondent will be asked to provide his or her email address, and access to the questionnaire will only be limited to the specific email address. And lastly, it should be noted that any expenses incurred by the respondents during the collection of such data, such as load and mailing fee, will be paid by the researchers. After all the data will be collected from the research participants, the data will be encoded in the Microsoft Excel and it will be imported to IBM SPSS for data analysis. Furthermore, to analyze the data effectively, the researchers will be utilizing the following research tools. First, we have the frequency and percentage distribution, Likert scale, mean, standard deviation, time series analysis, Pearson correlation coefficient, and the dependent sample t-test. All mentioned treatment tools will be used to determine the effects or impact of the rice rarification law to the rice farmers of the rice farming industry of Leyte province in terms of livelihood sustainability. They will also be used to determine the impact and significance of the rice tarification law to the current state of the rice farming industry in the selected areas of Leyte province. All statistical analysis would be performed using IBM SPSS. Furthermore, statistical significance will be determined at the 0.05 level. Then we have the program budget. The following table shows two types of expenses determined by the researchers, which are the direct expenses and other expenses, and their corresponding cost per respondent, multiplied by the number of respondents, which is 36, resulting to the total cost. The direct expenses consists of, first, delivery fees of the transmittal letters and questionnaires, which is 100 pesos per respondent. Then we have the printing of transmittal letters and questionnaires, 100 pesos per respondent. Other materials and supplies needed, 20 pesos per respondent. And the access to supplemental documents with a total cost of 1,000 pesos. Consultant fee for the correlation and other statistical analysis, which is 1,500 pesos for the total cost. And next, we have the other expenses, which consist of token of appreciation to be given to the respondents, 75 pesos each, and the honorarium fee for the Department of Agriculture representative, 1,000 pesos, miscellaneous expenses, 1,000 pesos, with a total of 15,120 pesos. For our ethical considerations, the collected data, consisting of the personal information of the respondents and their respective responses to the questionnaire, shall be treated with utmost confidentiality. The responses provided by respondents will only be used for the purposes of this research. In the same way, the identity of the respondents shall remain anonymous. Only the researchers shall have access to the data collected from the respondents. And that is all. Thank you for listening. God bless and keep safe.